Welcome to the ISM Western New York Chapter Lunch and Learn webinar series. Our speaker for today is Jane Tierney, who will be speaking on Lean Six Sigma for supply chains. Please be sure to ask her any questions using our chat or our Q&A function. Now on to the presentation, a little bit about Jane. Jane is the founder of her company, Purple Link, sharing with clients a better way to obtain value through the supply chain. Jane is an engineer with an MBA, Greenbelt, CPSM, and CPSD certifications. In addition to running her business, she also teaches operations and supply chain management courses in the California State University system and serves on the advisory board for the operations and supply chain management. Several years ago, she co-founded the Southern California SCRM Council for local executives focused on supply chain risk management, which also hosts an annual supply chain risk symposium. Jane is a speaker, author, and she also offers her dynamic dialogue webinars and conducts workshops on a variety of topics. At this point, I'm going to turn the program over to you, Jane.
Thanks, Kathy, for that introduction. And it sounds like I need to update that for you. But nonetheless, here we are today. So I'm actually on East Coast time today, which is unusual for me. I live in the Los Angeles area, but I'm on vacation and I'm sitting here in beautiful Maine. So we're spending a few days here. We've done some visiting with family and for vacation, and now we're just kind of winding up this little tour of the Northeast. So uh, hello to everybody from Western New York. It's nice to see a lot of the same faces and whatever. And I'm always excited to be talking about Lean and Six Sigma because I think it's so important to people as individuals, to companies, to the work that you do, the work that you can do. One thing I really love about Lean is it's easy to implement. It's relatable. You can incorporate it into your personal life, into your home, into your garage, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And Six Sigma takes it to another level with statistics. It's always a good thing for people to understand the quality and to be able to monitor quality through the use of statistics. And I encourage everybody to learn a little bit about statistics other than just what the odds are at Las Vegas or the odds are for that incredible Powerball thing that was won in the last week. I can't remember what it was, but the odds there are so ugly that if you really thought about it, you probably wouldn't even buy a ticket. But there's a lot of other things that are very easy to understand about statistics. And putting those two tools together, the Lean and the Six Sigma, is really, really very powerful for a company, a business, and a supply chain people. We look at not only our company, but we look at all the suppliers that we manage. And any information that suppliers can send to their customers about their statistical process control, about their use of statistics in their quality management is a really nice thing to have. And it really gives you more confidence in what your supplier can do. And as supply chain individuals, if we can actually read a little bit of that, understand that, look at what looks good and understand the difference between good charts and bad charts and what they're doing, then that makes us more valuable as well. So let's kind of just jump into that because I really think that this is worth the effort. So this slide should not be there, but here's a little thing. I like to start out sometimes with a joke, and Dilbert is one of the people that I think usually hits the nail on the head when it comes to workplace humor. So here's the big boss, and he says, I just read this great book about how to lean our business processes. Everybody's doing it. So we better jump under the bandwagon before the train leaves the station, and I'm putting you in charge. And then Dilbert does his usual blah, 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 thinking about how much he'd like to punch the boss in the face. And of course, the boss is so helpful. And he says, if you need any management support, you know where to go. So this is typically what happens a lot of times with Lean and Six Sigma. Okay, we're going to be lean. Okay, we're going to introduce Six Sigma. So these things are confusing and they get everybody's back up and say, oh my God, what are you going to ask me to do now? This is going to be hard. So statistics can be a little bit tricky, but I don't really think it's that hard when you break it down. But the lean is really, I think it's kind of intuitive, even though I'm not the most lean person at home. I understand these concepts, and I think everybody can start to apply these. So we're going to talk about a lot of different things today. We're going to talk about what are these initiatives, what's the difference between Lean and Six Sigma. Actually, I don't have a raffle and a prize today, but I do. I'm introducing a new program, and so if you want to be in on that information, you can send me an email to jane@purplelink.co. That I put that in the chat. And if you just put your name in there, then I'll put you on, and I'll tell you a little bit about that at the end of the presentation. So a lot of companies say, why bother with this? And a lot of employees say, why are we bothering with another one of these silly initiatives that never gives us anything? And we always end up right back where we started. So the reason that companies bother with initiatives like this is because they need and they want to improve. They really need improvements in their workforce, in their workplace, in their processes, in their procedures, and they need improved results. So that phrase, faster, better, cheaper that we've all heard probably for a long time, that still applies because we're trying to get faster time to market. We're trying to get faster development time for products. We're trying to get faster time to upgrade, implement changes that we need to do in our products and services. We're trying to get better quality, better technology, better flexibility, agility, responsiveness, all these buzzwords that you hear all about supply chains and how they aren't as robust as they could be, should be, might be. We're trying to improve better customer satisfaction. And we look for terms like ROI, return on investment, return on assets, inventory turns. We want better results in all of those. And when we ask that along with lower prices, um, better indirect, uh, better direct implementation, and lower cost to implement all of these things, it's really, really important. So that's why we're trying to do these in a lot of organizations still. They've tried this. This Lean and Six Sigma are not new. They're way old. They're way older than I am. And yet they are still not embraced universally. And yet there are a lot of reasons to do these kinds of things. So we're going to look at some of these in a little more detail. The basic concepts are derived in large part from the Toyota production system. And if you've heard about the Toyota production system, it is not new. And it was not developed by people trying to look for better um, manufacturing practices. What they were looking for was better time to cash. So if you know any accounting or you know just how things work in your own personal checkbook with what comes in and what goes out. So when do I get paid? So when can I pay this bill and all of these kinds of things? That's time to cash. So we're looking at that as a business. They were looking at that as a business and said, how can we improve our time to cash? And they came up with several ideas and several techniques that actually did help them reduce their time to cash, but it also improved the quality of their products. It improved the consistency of the products. It made people's work life easier and easier to understand. So Taiichi Ono, who's one of the authors, said, all we're trying to do is shorten the timeline from order receipt to collecting the cash for the goods and services that we provide. So that's what they were really trying to do. But they ended up doing a lot more than that in order to serve that purpose. So these things all work together. Well, there's a lot of reasons that people come to these kinds of webinars and take classes in Lean and Six Sigma because these topics are really broad. There's deep. You can take a lot of courses. You can dig right into that. There's all kinds of certifications you can get. You can get Lean certifications. You can get some white belt, yellow belt kinds of things, but you can also get the green belt and the black belt that are mostly associated with the Six Sigma. But there's a lot of different things that you can do, and there's a lot of reasons that people do that. So I'm going to just hit some highlights, and hopefully I'll pique your interest in ways to learn more. So here's some basics. Lean is really about eliminating waste. We're looking for 6 or 8 or so kinds of waste, and then there's different sources that quote seven sources of waste, eight sources of waste, or whatever. I've seen a few more than that. But to define the waste, we're looking at how we can reduce that. So that's what lean is trying to do. So we rely a lot on subject matter experts, SMEs, to do that. So we use the people to improve the process that actually do the process day in and day out. This is something that's very important. So we look at the process times, we look at the material, we look at what is a smooth flow. And then in Six Sigma, we're trying to reduce variation. So this is the statistical part. There's variation in the results that we get. And we're looking at things that we measure very in detail. So we're looking at things like tolerance allowances, and we're measuring things to, 2 and 3 decimal points. So Six Sigma is heavily statistically based. We're trying to reduce the overall defects, but also reduce the variation in those defects and reduce the variation in the good products as well. So therefore, we reduce the defects. So Six Sigma is actually defined, and I'll show you a couple charts later, as 3.4 defects per million opportunities. So we talk about DPPM, defects per million, defects per part. So DPPM, defects per million parts or per parts per million kinds of things, and an overall process capability. Do you have a process that is going to allow you to produce things consistently in a consistently good manner so that you are going to be able to meet your goals and produce the quality that you want out of your processes? So there's some key Japanese words. This is a little cheat sheet. And these are some words that you might have heard if you've done any work in and around Japanese terms of lean or Japanese ways of doing lean and Six Sigma. So muda is the word for waste. And this is, there's a big muda thing with a cross on it. We don't want that. Kaizen is a very common word. Kaizen can mean a philosophy, it can mean activities and initiative. And it's also a Kaizen is often what companies call a little quick, hey, we're going to improve this area. We're going to do a Kaizen, which is usually a day or less of that to actually get people together, the subject matter experts, the people that know the product, and any other consulting type people that you need to say, this is how it should work. This is what things you can do to do a quick change in an area to try to make some improvements inexpensively, quickly, and impactfully. Kanbans are signals that we use. It translates as visual signal. And what that does is it tells people on the floor this work is finished, it needs to be moved, or it says, hey, I'm running out of work. I need more work for this area. This area is working well. This area is not so working so well. But it means a visual signal, and there's a lot of different ways to use that in a manufacturing society. Poka-yoke means error proof. This is where we want to find the root cause. If we have a problem, we want to find out what caused it, and we want to make sure we can't do that same error again. So we do a lot of things to change processes, techniques, tools, so that we can't make an error again. So a common one used not in a factory, but is an ATM machine. Go to the ATM machine and you put your card in. So in the one I like to use, in the one that's closest to my house, I put my card in, I put all my numbers in, and then it gives me my card back. It spits the card out and it beeps with the card. It won't give me my money until I take the card. So that's an error proof. That says I'm not going to walk away from that with my card, without my card, because I can't get my money until I get the card. And if we stand there and look at the ATM machine, what we usually look at is is the cash slot. Where am I going to get my money? So this keeps you from doing that. Circuit breaker boxes and the GFI systems in your bathroom, all of those are error proof. They keep you from making an error and doing something that's going to hurt. Seatbelt monitors and open door monitors in your car. I have a rental car and we didn't have the back closed. It's an SUV kind of thing, and we didn't have the back closed all the way. And the car, when I started it up and tried to leave, it said, nope, you can't do this because you've got the back end is open. So These things are very good for us to use. Poka-yoke is what we call that process to error-proof it. Murray is overburdening, and it's either for people or machines. Murrah is inconsistency. Gemba and a Gemba walk is what we talk about a lot when you just walk the factory and you just see what's going on. So you take a walk around, see what's going on. One of the earliest managers that I had that was a senior level, he did a walk every day before this was in vogue, and he just would walk through the factory and check out what was going on. And if the staff worked on Saturday, the factory worked on Saturday, he would come in on Saturday in his casual clothes, but he would always walk through the factory, see who was working, see what was going on, see what they were working on. This is a good thing to do. It means that you're getting in touch with what's actually going on. There's a word called Genchi Gembutsu, which is go see for yourself, which means, and as supply chain people, we do this a lot. We get stuck in our desks and we don't go to the factory floor. We don't check this out. We don't go to the inventory warehouse, the crib, and see what's the parts are looking like and all this kind of stuff. We also don't go to uh, the 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 defect crib where we hold the parts that are not good. So we want those out of the good inventory and away from that, and we put those in a cage. And it's good for people in supply chain to go look at those things because it's important to know what's working and what's not. And then the last one of these words is obeya, which is an arena for discussions. It's also like a war room kind of thing, if you've ever used a war room or been in that kind of situation. So that's some Japanese words. So what we're trying to do is to look at this, and we find out that in an industry week study, 70% of plants are using lean. 24% are reporting significant results, which is kind of sad that only 24%. But it's also because success is difficult to define. So what is successful for one organization may not be for another, and that's often part of the challenge in that. So we want to look at that, but we'd like to get those numbers higher because it makes sense, right? We want to know what's working and what's not. 53% of Fortune 500 companies use Six Sigma, and 82% of Fortune 100 companies are embracing Six Sigma methodology. And yet they're still not reporting results that they are targeting. They would like to get better results than they're actually seeing, which is probably with most initiatives that companies do these days. So it is a challenge, and it's going to continue to be a challenge to make improvements on the shoestring budgets that we have with the inflation that we're all dealing with and the challenges of world trade. But that's what we're trying to do. So we're looking at how to do that. Here's some companies that use Lean and Six Sigma. Six Sigma, 3M, General Electric, Abbott. You can see these, and then Parker Hannifin, it should be, not Hannif. Nike, Intel, all use Lean. So a lot of companies are using Lean because these tools are good to employ. They create a culture around them, and they help you take advantage of opportunities that are there to improvements. So here's some ways you can do it in your own company. For Lean, we start with these 5S elements. We look at them, and you need to do these in order. So you look at this, and one of the things I always use for an example is, do you have a junk drawer? Excuse me. Do you have an area or a garage or a closet full of stuff that you just everything goes into that closet? Or is your garage a mess where you can't find things? You know that you have these tools, this equipment, you can't find it. Or that junk drawer, it's often in the kitchen where all of the extra pens go, pencils, twist ties, rubber bands, maybe an extra pair of scissors, this, that, or the other. If you have a junk drawer, any of these, a junk closet, any of these, this is a great place to start. And so you use these steps in this order. The first thing you want to do is take everything out, eliminate the clutter, and get rid of everything that's non-essential. So if you ever try to clean out the junk drawer while you leave everything in the junk drawer, it doesn't work as well. The best thing to do is to empty the junk drawer. Take everything out of it, clean. We'll get to that in a second. Take everything out of it, go through all the stuff that you took out and say, this pen doesn't work. Let's get rid of it. This is broken. So what's essential? What works? What's actually benefiting us or could benefit us if we could find it at the right time. So we look through that and we sort through everything. So that's the first S. Then what we do is we get a location for those items. So we say, we're going to straighten this out. We're going to say, okay, these are the categories of things I have. Maybe in your junk drawer, you have some tools like an extra screwdriver, a pair of scissors, um, something else, another kind of tool that you use in the kitchen. And then you have things like rubber bands, twist ties, pens, uh, maybe pens and pencils, maybe some other things, maybe some other kind of spare tools that you use in the kitchen periodically, but not very often. So you straighten those out, you find a place for those. And then you go clean that area. So at that point, we're going to clean out that drawer. We're going to make sure everything in there is out, all the crumbs, all this, all the other. We're going to clean that drawer. And then we're going to put the things back in where we decided these are the things that we need. This is how we're going to organize it, right? So then we've got a drawer, we've got things organized. Maybe we put little drawer dividers in there, maybe we put small containers in there, like a little basket or a little cup that holds like paper clips or something like that to have that, or a pen or pencil holder kind of thing that you have. So we clean it all out, then we put everything in there. Then we find a standardization kind of thing. So we're looking for ways that we can make this stick. So we want to make sure that everything is clearly indicated with what goes where. In a drawer, it's kind of easy if you have one or two things in there, that's the indicator that that's what else should go in there. In a factory, sometimes we do things like shadow boards. We put the outline of the scissors to say these go here. In a closet, you can put different markers. You can use different colored hangers. You can put stickers on your hangers or do things like that, put things in order. So we want to standardize this and make sure that we can keep that up. And then we need ways to sustain that. Because if we can't sustain it, then we basically fail. So how many of you have ever had a junk drawer and you cleaned it out and you went back 3 months later and it's a junk drawer again? Or worse, with your garage. You get all the work that you need to do. You clean out your garage, you get everything organized, or that closet, you get everything organized. And then you go back to your old habits and you go back a few months later and you say, oh my God, I just cleaned this closet out. And look, now I still, again, I can't find anything. I know I hung this in there. I know I put these items in there. Maybe it's a basketball, something from the beach, this or that or the other, and I can't find it. So if we don't sustain it, then we're not doing as much as we can. So we want to find ways that we keep ourselves adhering to the process that we set up. And if we didn't set up a good enough process, we can tweak it, we can change it. Some businesses have added a sixth S for safety. I don't know if there's a Japanese word for that, but they add that in. But for me, having worked around factories most of my life, most of my adult career life, safety is just inherent in there, and I don't need a reminder. But in some cases, it might be something good for you to add into that to keep that safety. But we want to come up with a process that we're going to be able to keep up. If you've read the book by Marie Kondo or seen her podcast or any of her articles or whatever, she wrote the book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, I believe is what it is. She's all about lean, and she does it with your house. She says, this is what you need to do to clean out all these things that are not there. So here are these 8 wastes that I talked about. Again, you'll find different versions of this, but they're all pretty much variations of theme. So it's all about defects. It's more over processing, doing things that you don't need to do that aren't adding value or aren't making your product better. Sometimes it's over inspection. You keep inspecting something that you don't find any defects on in that area, in that step. And so statistically, you should be able to remove that or do a very seldom kind of spot check that you do. So every 100 units you check instead of every 5 units. Overproducing, producing more than you actually have demand for. Waiting and wait times. This is not planned wait times, but this is things where parts have to sit around or people have to sit around waiting for something. Inventory by itself is not necessarily a waste, but extra inventory is. And so it's one of the things of lean is really about concepts like just-in-time inventory. So managing your inventory so that you have the least amount that you need or an optimal amount that you need. You don't want to run too thin because there's no reason to add that in as a risk, but you do want to make sure that you're managing that. So be careful with that. Transportation, excess movement through the factory, excess movement if you have to take things outsourced and bring it back in, that kind of stuff. If you're moving materials, people, equipment around more than you should or more than you might, those are potential waste areas. And underused talent. This is one of the ones that came in later, but I think it's a very important one because we often have people that we are not using their full potential. And this is an important area to go look and see, do you have people that can contribute more than they are? That's a great place to look for waste. So the lean values are really start with the customer perspective. We're trying to add value to the customer. So we look at the voice of the customer. So we want to look at things from the customer's perspective, not necessarily from the supplier's perspective. So we know that, oh yeah, this is good because this is how we set it up. But is that really what the customer is seeing? So we want to do that kind of thing. Another way to look at that is called becoming the patient. So you walk through the entire value stream and you see what's going on and you look at this from if you were the patient, not you were the operating diagnostician kind of thing. So how did you feel in that perspective? There's 5 M's and 1 E. I learned this many years ago when I was an industrial engineer, when you look at different variables, man, machine, methods, and materials. So man is all the people involved, man or men, but it involves people, not just one gender or another. Materials, any of the materials that are used in there. Machines can be equipment, it can be tools, it can be an actual machine, but anything that is utilized in order, a piece of equipment type thing. Use the M word because they're easier to remember. And then methods are processes, techniques, and that kind of thing. Measurements, metrics, those are very important. And then the environment. So what are we doing to the environment with all of this? We want to always consider that. And one of the other lean values is to use teams, and cross-functional teams are a big one of the cornerstones of lean is to get more than one voice in there. So these lean principles, again, around value. And value is one of those things that if each company, each product, each organization has to define what is value to us, or what do we define value to our customers. So it's not an always easy thing to define. And companies say, oh yeah, we want to add value. Okay, well, what does that mean? What does that look like? What does that sound like, feel like, taste like? What is that in our particular business? It's important to define that and make sure everybody's aligned. Then we're going to value stream. We're going to map the process. We're going to do flow charts. We're going to say what in these flow chart steps that we do, what's adding value and what's not, what's redundant. Do we have things that we're doing twice? It's akin to reengineering, but it's not exact. But it's really looking at that from an outside perspective and saying, what do we do that is important for us, and what did we do just because we've always done it that way? So we want to look at that. Look at the flow. So we want this nice, smooth flow through the factory and through the whole supply chain. So we want to look at that. Where are our delays? Where are the bottlenecks? We want push systems less often than we want pull systems. So pull systems are built to order. They're the things that tell us, yes, we're not going to do a lot of work until we actually have demand, or we have demand quantified. So we're not going to overproduce. We're not going to do a lot of those things. And then perfection. We're trying to get to perfection. We know that we can't get there immediately, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to continue to strive for that. So it's one of the things that we want to do is to keep adding to our to keep raising our bar. We want to keep adding to the challenges that we have. It doesn't mean that we want to frustrate the crap out of everybody, but we want to, and we do want to celebrate our successes. But getting better is not enough. We want to get better and then better and better. It doesn't mean we have to keep pushing the same metric. If we get better quality, maybe we can do it in less time so we can improve the time. If we can do something over here, maybe we can do it with less inventory, or we can do some redesigning or less process steps on that. So whatever we can do, we look at it from all different kinds of perspectives. Obstacles. So we're trying to decide how much awareness people have of what we're trying to do, what's good, what's not. And we always say, oh, we've always done it like this. It's fine. It's not, if it's not broke, we don't, don't fix it. And that's not necessarily so. So the one of the challenges with Lean and Six Sigma is that people just don't understand what it is. And it's just another fad. It's just another thing. We don't have enough time. We don't have enough resources as it is. So why are we trying to do another initiative in this company? Or we aren't a manufacturing company. We don't care about this crap. This is all for manufacturing companies. And that's not true. Service organizations, order fulfillment organizations, a lot of organizations that don't actually do any kind of hard manufacturing. If you do activities that are repetitive in any way, shape, or form, like processing orders, those you can all put lean concepts to. The too much math, that scares a lot of people with the statistics. So start slow on that. Do the lean first and don't scare off the people with, oh, now you got to learn about all the statistics. And we tried it. It didn't work for us. It's not right. Um, these are all challenges that people have to deal with in the workforce. And managers have to deal with this to say, no, we're going to try these things. We're going to do these things. They work in most organizations, so we can make it work here. How can we make it work here? And what are the good things you see of this? So there are a lot of other ways to do the lean kind of thing. So we lean organizations hold people accountable. They make sure that people are responsible they know what they're responsible for, and we hold them accountable to do those things. Leading by example. This is an area, any kind of manager level, you have to lead by example. You have to have people that practice what they preach. If you expect your organization to change, you better be demonstrating the change that you want to see in the organization. We want people to be adaptive, agile, flexible. I'll tell you what I know for sure right now is that we are always being asked to do things differently, learn new things. There's all of this AI, first it was computers, then it was this system, and people are still changing MRP systems and updating this and the software updates. Kathy and I got on this Zoom thing today, and they have changed something on Zoom. Well, shoot, now we have to learn what that means and what that looks like. So we're always being asked to do that, and that is not going to change. So what I tell students in college is, if you think you're getting your degree and you're done studying and you're done learning, you are wrong. You are always going to have to keep learning. And I've experienced that in my own life, my own career. You learn as you go and you stay open. And the more things that you learn, the more easy and enjoyable life is, and your work can be the same. And it can make things a lot easier. AI doesn't scare the crap out of me because I don't think it's going to replace everybody, but I think it can help us do some things more quickly and better than we've done before. So if you look for the good in things and look for ways to change, it's going to be a lot easier. In lean organizations, issues get raised very candidly, very openly. People do not take offense to somebody saying, I don't think this is right. I don't, I think we're doing this wrong over here. This could be improved. This is not anything about, not a lot of egos in lean organizations. They're really about what's our purpose here, and we're trying to make the best result for everyone in this organization. There's a nice balance in lean organizations between strategic and tactical. So we spend time on the strategies, but we also look at how do we implement these these things? What are the details of implementing so that we don't just say, okay, this is how we're going to do it. Now you guys go do it. It's really about how can we work together to do that, and including the tactical day-to-day activities that have to be accomplished to accomplish your strategic goals and exercise those. And respect. So the if you've ever worked in an organization where people don't listen, where people are easily offended, where they don't want input from things, those are not great organizations to work in. It's so much more rewarding, comfortable, easy to work in an area where people listen to each other, where people are encouraged to communicate. Tell me about your thing, and I'll tell you about mine, and we'll see if we can figure out how they can work better together. Questioning people, following up on things, and really respecting everyone's position. I've worked in all kinds of factories, big factories where we have, lots of senior execs and CEO types, and we have people who clean the floors and the bathrooms, right? So everyone does a job that contributes. And if you respect the job that gets done, the job that needs to get done, and the person who has taken that job on, your life is going to be better and you're going to feel better about working where you work. So it's an important thing. So I'm going to do a little bit on statistics because I don't want to scare everybody. But Six Sigma, again, is a representation of how the processes perform, and it measures the variation. So it assumes a normal distribution, which is that nice bell curve that you've all seen 100 times. And it says everything is evenly distributed within that bell curve. There are other distributions. Normal distributions occur in nature. It is very common. It is the most common distribution. If you ever take a statistics class, you might learn things like chi-square distributions, I think beta distributions. There's some other types of distributions, different curves, shapes than that nice bell curve, but those are not as common, and you don't really have to learn a lot about those. The Six Sigma refers to six standard deviations. The term we use in math for standard deviation is sigma, and that is on both sides of the mean. So if you don't know those terms, don't worry about it a whole lot. I'll show you a chart in a couple minutes that kind of shows that. The standard deviation is a measure of how far away from the mean that you go, the mean, the average of your population, and it puts that into different percentages. So much of the percentage falls within one standard deviation, two standard deviation, and so on. And I'll show you that in just a second. But Six Sigma is data driven. So it really looks at defining and measuring and measuring your defects, improving your processes, reducing that variation. There's two common processes. One is DMAIC, which is define, measure, analyze, improve, and control, or the DMADV, which is define, measure, analyze, design again, define first, and then design, and then verify. So you design an improvement. Either of those can work, and both of those are fairly common. DMAIC is the one I see the most often. So the DMAIC model, again, you define your problem, you measure what you can't, do your analysis, make your improvement. The I is not implementation. I is about improving, defining your improvement. You try it out, and then the C says we're going to go control it. Because this again goes back to, oh, I reorganized my closet, but I didn't put any controls in. So when I go back 3 months later, either I haven't been following my process, or my other people who also use that closet aren't following, and now everything's back into a hodgepodge and a mess again. So we're going to put some controls in to verify this. And in this case, we're going to put some metrics in because we're using more math or more measurable things. But the idea is the same. So the statistics here, we look at this. Mean is an average that most people are familiar with that. Sigma is the standard deviation. And again, I'll show you that. The range is the difference between the lowest and the highest value in the sample that we take of the population. So if we're measuring table legs that are supposed to be, say, 30.00 inches high, then we measure some table legs. And if we have one that's 30.08 and 30 and 29.02, we take the difference between those, and that is the range. And that gives us some statistical information. So that's important. The sample size is, it says if we build 1,000 things, we don't have to check 1,000 things. We're going to check a smaller sample of that. So how many things do we need to check? And there's all kinds of calculations and rules to go by. In a normal population, the standard rule is if you check 30 of them, that gives you a good indication. And then there are different things around confidence levels. If you check 30 of them and you reject one, do you reject the whole lot? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on how much confidence you want to have in that and what your process is and all kinds of different things. So you can pick all of that. So it gets complex, but it's really about, we make these 500 at a time, but we don't want to check 500 of them. So how many do I need to check to be reasonably confident that I'm going to have, that I've got a good batch here, that these 500 things that I made are all going to get into customers' hands and not blow up and not come back as a recall or anything like that. So we use things like control charts. We have two different kinds of data that we use. We use variable data and attribute data. Variable data is the quantitative. We're measuring. I'm building a table. I'm going to measure my table legs because I want them to be 30 inches high. So all of them I need to have 30 inches high or we'll get a wobbly table, right? But to get every table leg to be 30.000 is going to be very, very costly and probably not worth the effort. So we're going to put a tolerance in there, but we're going to measure those so that we know. Then we have things like attribute data. So if I'm making shirts and I look at buttons, I'm going to look at missing buttons. That's an attribute. We don't measure that. We just count how many buttons are missing or buttons that are broken or that are too loose to stay on, that we know that they're going to fall off. We look at seams to say, is that seam complete? Is it completely around the cuff or whatever? So we look at completeness. So it's a go, no go kind of thing. That's attribute data. Is it good or is it bad? Is it scratched or is it not? If there's a scratch, that's an attribute data. Then you can measure the length, the width, the depth of the scratch if you need to. But if you're just looking to say, is it scratched? That's a way to measure. And we do counting on those. So the Lean and Six Sigma, again, I told you I'd show you some charts. So this is the bell curve. You can see it looks like a bell, and that's what we're trying to do with that. So we look at where the mean is and how we're doing this. So this green one, we would like most of our charts, and this is a chartsmanship thing, but we don't want it to be a chartsmanship thing. When you have a higher and tighter bell curve, that means you have less variation because you're not as wide. The blue one where it's spread out, that's not a bad thing. You have a nice normal distribution, but your range is a lot more, your variation is a lot higher in that kind of a curve. So we really want to try to get more like this green curve. Now here's one that shows you the way this works. So if you look at these are the sigmas. This is the sigma signal here. So in this example, our average here, and then we have one standard deviation on either side, higher and lower than the mean. And that represents, if we look at everything that's within the one standard deviation plus or minus of that mean, 68% of our population should be there. If we go to 2 sigma on either side, that's going to be 95%. And that's a pretty good number, right? If you have a 95% yield or 95% pass rate, that isn't terrible. Then if you go another sigma, you go to 99.7%. So man, that's really good. There's not very many businesses that would be unhappy with 99.7% pass rate. There are a few, but many, or if not most, would be very happy with a 99.7% pass rate. And you can see that on the sides of this, we have our average here in the middle. But these red bars on either side, these are our spec limits. These are our specifications. So what this says is our variation is well within our specification limits. So that's a really good place to be. That's where you want to be. You want your control chart to be well within your specification limits because you can have a nice normal curve, but you can have it skewed to the point where some of that is out of your spec limit. Sometimes if you're a manufacturing person, you often see tolerances that are plus or minus zero point 0.2 or plus or minus, zero point 0.0 something. And sometimes you see plus 0 minus zero point 0.2 or um, plus zero point 0.2 minus 0. It has to be at least that big. It can be a little bit bigger, but it can't be any smaller than that. So depending on what your limits are, you can set that. And what you want, the target is to get in between that so that everything works together. So here's another example. This one shows Six Sigma. So Six Sigma, again, 6 standard deviations on either side of the mean, says we're going to get all but 3.4 out of every million opportunity. So the 99.999, however many that is, I can't read it that small print on my computer, but it's not very many defects. And most processes don't require that. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try that, but you don't have to do that, right? So, but that's how we measure it. So here's some X bar and R charts. X bar charts measure against the mean. So we've got upper control limits. We calculate that from that, and we have specification limits. And then the range, we track the range of the sample size that we do. And this is some pretty really easy math, and we could show you some of that in a class or in a workshop that I do pretty easily. Then we do some charting on the attribute data, on the counts that we do. So we have a couple of charts for that. So what we do is we're trying to do ways to find improvement areas. And one of the things we do is we do the ask why 5 times. So we say, and if you've ever been around a child who will say, okay, why is the grass green? Okay, we can talk about that. Why is the sky blue? And why isn't the sky purple? Why? So, and that can start to irritate you when it's a little child and you starts to rack your brain as to, I'm not sure I know all these answers. But in business, in the workplace, we ask why too. So we say this part failed. Okay, why did it fail? Well, it's too short. Okay, why is it too short? Well, because we did this in the process. Okay, why did we do that? Well, because Susie just got hired and she wasn't really sure how to set it. And so now we just peel that back. We peel that onion until we find out what is the real root cause of this. And then we use just in time. So we use smaller inventory cushions because we have better handle on our demand. Just in time is still a very viable tool to use. I have a lot of people who say after COVID, do people do away with just in time? No, they did not, but it is not applicable everywhere. It never should have been applicable everywhere to every part. But if you have short lead times, if you have easy replenishment, lots of substitutes, then just in time can be a really good tool to use. I see a hand up and I will get that when I finish, if that's okay. Kanbans we talked about, check sheets you should know about, bottleneck analysis, we want a nice smooth flow. A lot of terms here that are pretty easy to understand and apply. So here's some I talked about this before. Certifications and roles, white and yellow belts, green belts, black belts, and then there's champions that actually are the ones, the managers that sponsor this, that actually provide the resources and that check and make sure that the teams that they put together are actually achieving their results. So that's a good thing to have. You need all of these things in the organization. If you don't have formal black belts or master black belts, you can still do a heck of a lot of good work with people who have some basic training, either white belts, yellow belts, green belts, kinds of things. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. You can get these online. You can get these through like the ASQ organization, different universities. do that. Extension services, extension colleges are very good sources of this. Um, without good statistical controls, we have problems. Samsung Notes had that problem with the phones that were that burned people. That was the Note 7 phone. That was a really bad thing. I know that's old, but people remember that. The Abbott baby formula a couple years ago, that was a really bad thing. Boeing, the Max, the software, the pilot training, as well as the doors falling off, all of these things happen if you don't have really good statistical controls. So you can look at this. You guys can probably come up with some of your own um, examples where companies have had gotcha issues with a lot of this. They cost companies time, money, lawsuit lawyers, all those kinds of things that you don't really want to have to deal with as a company. It's hard enough just to keep going and do what you're supposed to do. So there is a better way to do this. There's a lot of different ways that companies can employ these methodologies. Lean and Six Sigma rely heavily on subject matter experts, which you have already in your employee pool. Their knowledge and insights are key. There's a lot more benefits, measurable, unmeasurable. Morale is better when you work on these things collectively in a lean fashion. So getting out of the box, looking out of the box, and looking at operations and tasks as a customer really does help. The basic financial math is not that hard, and it's not that hard to teach because revenue minus expenses equals profits. And if we can reduce our expenses, then we are going to improve our profits. It's a very simple math that way. So here's a couple things. If you have tried this and aren't satisfied with the results, I'm happy to talk to you about that. I'm happy to work with people on that. If you think more is possible, I suggest you take another look at this. There's other ways to do it. I'm starting programs in October and launching a 6-month program in January for improvement processes that are going to be online, a way for people to look at this. If you're interested in looking at that, contact me at Jane at purplelink.net, or also I put into the chat purplelink.co, and I will get you on the list for getting the information about these programs. I'm really excited about them. I've got a lot of things that I want to do, and I'm happy to share more information. So please feel free to contact me, and I'm happy to add you to my list. Finally, I just like to leave you with a thought. Continuous improvement is not about the things that you do well. That's just work, you know. But continuous improvement is about removing the things that get in the way of your work, the headaches, the things that slow you down. That's what continuous improvement is all about. This is from Bruce Hamilton, and he calls himself the old lean dude. He writes a blog, he's got a website, he's got a lot of stuff going on. So he's an interesting resource if you're interested in that. So I saw a question. I don't know if it's in the questions or what, but I'm happy to take questions. I see about the slides. I'm happy to send you the slides. If you send me an email, I will respond and give you the slides.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Let me see. Lauren, did you want to ask your question live? Because I can give you the mic.
Is that the hand that was raised? I can stop
Yes,
sharing.
yes, yeah. Yeah, Lauren, just unmute yourself and then you can talk. Uh, she said it was an accident. Okay, no problem.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, if you want to reach me, you've got my email. I'm in LinkedIn. I'm really happy to connect with anybody and everybody in LinkedIn. Um, I am doing, presentations. Kathy tells me that you're going to change your model and not do as many webinars, so that's disappointing because I always like meeting with this group. But if you want anything one-on-one, if you want something else, I think a lot of you know how to get hold of me. I'm happy to be connected and to dialogue about anything and everything.
Oh, thank you, Jane. And we appreciate you bringing this topic to the community once again, and appreciate all the attendees. And Jane will definitely, and we'll get this the copy of a video, the recap of this program out to everybody, probably by tomorrow or by Thursday. Okay. And if anybody has any last minute questions, they can just put it in the chat real quick, or um, we'll stop the recording at this point. So, but we thank you all for attending. And as always, Jane, you always bring a lot of great topics to all of us, and we appreciate your time for doing that.
I'm happy to share, and everybody enjoy the summer, what we have left.
Thank you.